Welcome to another episode of Silk and Steel. I am your host, Carl Za. Today we continue our conversation with English translator of Chinese Karl Marx Anime, Feiyang. Yeah, it's hard not to be sympathetic to these students because they're just young and idealistic. In many ways, they kind of remind me of the students in the 1980s. In the lead up to the 1989 Tiananmen Square student protest. I mean, there's actually many people in the West actually don't understand about that the whole rationale behind the student test in 1989. Most of the students, even though they eventually they put the slogans about freedom, about democracy, but most of the students back then, they actually believe in socialism. They also believe what they've been taught, which is that they are the master of the society. They're inheritor of the earth. They thought, idealistically, yet naively thought, they can make a difference. But what happened in the background? There was a power struggle within the Communist Party at the time, and there were other factors involved. In the end, the students became kind of a political pawn, right? What they actually demanded became more irrelevant than the power struggle that was behind it. So it's hard not to sympathize with students, but I think sometimes we should recognize that there's things going on in the background that's more than it seems. That's what you're trying to get across, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure like how involved the students were with like China Labor Bulletin, but as been pointed out on Twitter, this is an organization that has received a significant amount of money from the National Endowment for Democracy. So it's definitely an organization that you can't really fault the government for having some degree of suspicion there. So yeah, it's any work with outside NGOs. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, like you said, I have to point out that the Chinese government is really paranoid basically after 1989 Tiananmen Square protests and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? So number one thing on the mind of the Chinese Communist Party leadership is not to repeat the collapse of Soviet Union in China, right? So one of the things they are really vigilant against is kind of U.S. weaponized NGO, the human rights groups, and trying to foment unrest and dissent. And so there are. This is like a touchy subject. This is why they kind of they're easily triggered. In modern parlance. So yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I would go a little bit further than you there. It is very clear that the United States, has in the past and probably still does, funded organizations that have tried to destabilize China, and they have good reason to. Like they've always seen China like before as like a communist country that is completely at odds with the United States, until Nixon, and even more recently, they see China as, hey, this is a rival that has the potential to eclipse us. We need to deal with them.
I was advocate for a second, though. Okay, so sure. I see what you are talking about because I have also been following some of these Peking University Marxist student supporters and activists on Twitter. And I did notice there's some kind of collaboration, if you will, between them and like the Eurogamuts of U.S. sponsored human rights groups like the Human Rights Watch and Radio Free Asia, and all the Euro suspects. But let me play the devil's advocate here, right? In societies, like China, where the Chinese government have kind of overwhelming power and control. I mean, is it really hard to blame? I mean, can you really blame these dissenters to try to seek outside power for help? I mean, like, who can they turn to, right? Like, they are, they're facing a very powerful bureaucracy, and they're basically trying to get all the help they could get, and in this case, in many cases, the only help they can get is those neocon in U.S. government, like the U.S. government sponsored, regime change groups that seek to foment dissent and sow division within China. But Lenin himself accepted help from the German Empire during World War One, right? To carry out, in order to carry out October Revolution, right? It's Germany that sent Lenin back on a train back to Russia, right? So I mean, how do you respond to that?
So then you would have to ask these people what is your end goal? Because if you merely just want to make China better, you're not going to get that by working with the United States. Like, you go back and ask the original 10 million members of Solidarity, did the collapse of the Soviet Union, did, what's going on in Eastern Europe since, has that made the workers a lot better? Like, it's, the life expectancy in the former Soviet Union has pretty much collapsed since then, right? So, there are Iraqi exiles who worked with the U.S. to do regime change in Iraq. You see the same in Libya. There are expats and there are dissidents everywhere. And how many of them have had a success story working with the United States, right? Like, I mean, on one hand, you need to be a little less naive about why exactly the United States would want to help you. Right? Like, what is the United States goal, right? Yeah, it's too powerful a country to think that you're going to be the one that's going to control the outcome and not them. But, aside from that, I do understand.
Play devil's advocate again, right?
Sure.
So this is what gets trotted out a lot of times by both the liberals and conservatives when it comes to defending the U.S. foreign policy. So what about Japan and Nazi Germany? U.S. successfully transformed Japan and U.S. Germany and Nazi Germany eventually to productive modern liberal democracies. What do you say to that?
I mean, would you consider Japan a liberal democracy? They have, outside of a very brief window, it's been controlled by the same party since, right? And it's, society-wise, it's it's dominated by like these various like zaibatsus for that entire period. They've had and even then, right? Like, did they really get along with the United States? The United States decided Japan got a little too big for their britches and forced the Plaza Accord on them too, right? So, it's a subordinate state to the United States. So, I mean, if that's what you want for China,
that's what the liberals are. They don't care about those finer points. I mean, in fact, now in all this talk about between U.S. and China tension, it's people don't even try to disguise it anymore. It's really just about preserving the U.S. hegemony, right? I mean, like, U.S. doesn't want anybody to threaten its role as a global hegemon, and like you say, it's fine as long as you play a subordinate role to U.S. and as long as you apply it to U.S.'s beckon and call. But For a strong independent power like China, that's obviously not acceptable. So, okay, I think you made a good case, and I want to switch topic for a second and go to like the fun part of the conversation, which is
Sure.
let's start with the Chinese user comments on Bilibili. So I have some of these captured in my tweets. So I'm gonna read off some of them.
I have some too. So, you go first,
Yeah.
and then I got some fun ones too.
Yeah. Okay. So here is when like the Marx from the first episode when the Marx was giving the speech, and this is what the the Chinese audience were saying. Marx is really hot, so hot. Really? Is he really this hot? Well, congratulations to boss Marx for destroying an empire in 1991. More. Mamma mia, I'm gonna be a fangirl. Daddy, tell me which direction. Damn, it's 3D again. What the heck? Hot to fight for the human enterprise. Okay, more. This is kind of a criticism. This guy is saying, the world elites are in it together. Wake up, idiots. See how the land have been ruined. If there's no Marx, there will still be a new China. Just a capitalist new China. More. Why is the whole world speaking Chinese? This is a reference to the fact that this anime was made in Mandarin. Why I feel he's going to be the final boss. And another one, in 1991, when we faced the carcass of that bear, this is a reference to USSR, we were also filled with hot tears. More. Okay, how much budget do you think they have to make this anime? This animation reflected the poverty of the proletariat. they're criticizing the 2G 3G transition here, and here people are just making like they're just playing around with the comments now. Someone say, "Oh, Lenin has entered the live stream." Khrushchev joins the live stream, sends 20 corn cobs as a gift. Khrushchev has been kicked out of live stream chat by Lenin. Entire house of Romanov joined the live stream chat. Gorbachev has been banned permanently from this live stream. Yeltsin has been kicked out of live stream chat because of improper language. There's more. And oh, no worries. 100 years later, you will be God to the Chinese. This is very good work. Don't be always prejudiced against domestic animation. Okay, here's more stuff. Let me see. Oh, and this is a part where moderator Stalin discovered Trump lurking and kicked him out of the live stream chat. Trump have been kicked out, and this is a scene where Marx and his future wife Yenny were talking, and the Chinese comments goes, "Look how Marx chat up girls! Wow, successful flirting! How did he get the girl so quick? Fuck, I'm in love." There's more. Oh, grandmaster flirting skills. Let's learn from Marx. Let's learn from Marx. Okay, go ahead. Let's hear yours.
Yeah, so I think most of yours are from the first couple of episodes.
Yes.
And I do want to caveat that mine come from the last two episodes, so there is some selection bias here. Like, if you stuck with this show all the way to episode 6 and 7, you're probably a much bigger fan of the show than, people who watched like the first two and then didn't continue watching.
Oh, before you start, let me cover a couple more, because this is one where people start criticizing Chinese government related to what we're talking about. This is one when Marx said, "Seeking truth is everyone's right and freedom," and then Chinese comments, "Peking University Marxist society. Corrupt government will eventually be overthrown." I was actually surprised to see that in the comments, actually. Peking University Marxist Marxist society is dead. And then people this is Marx were saying seeking truth is humankind's right and freedom, and people are just copying and pasting that in the comments like 1,000 times. And there's another guy trying to crack a joke. He said, "Who said I wouldn't dare to criticize the government? I can spread anti-Prussian government opinion piece everywhere today. Nobody will stop me." Right? They're making a dark humor. Okay, and this is the part where the police came to close down the Rhineland news. You disturb the social. So they're trying to paraphrase what the Chinese government does usually say against those dissenter groups. You disturb social order, endanger national security. And this is where the police pull out the gun on Marx, and he said, "Open fire! USSR, PRC finished. Fearless Marx. Quick, kill Marx! I bet you don't have bullets. Kill him! Kill Marx!" And another one, boom! End of the drama. If you open fire, then we don't have to study Marx anymore. Open fire, you will shake history. Open fire, the world will have no hope. Open fire, require political reading reduced by half. Hurry up, change history. Half of political books will be reduced. It's students' dream. And the other guy, some other guy chimed in to criticize this comment. He said, "Look at all this petit bourgeois in the comment section." There's more. Marx is so hot, so Marx. Shoot, then I don't have to study Marxist theory. I beg you to shoot, so I will be tested on one less subject. One bullet to win the Cold War. Oh, no, move aside. Marx is my husband. He's so hot. Don't shoot him. Wait, those of you who said shoot Marx so you will be tested on one less subject. If there's no Marx, you'll be tested on Hegel, you fool. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think you even mentioned that they started to moderate these comments because like episode 6 and 7, like in episode 6 where we have the Paris Commune, they say like, 这个节目在耍赖，一放这个国际歌我就泪目了. So like as soon as they play the Internationale, I start tearing up, and that is, I think, more representative of what the comments tend to be like in the last couple of episodes. And they were also pretty sad episodes, but there's a lot of 泪目, like 我哭了, things like that in the sadder parts. But there's also ones that I think were a little bit more surprising to me is like let's see, 苏联万岁, and that comes in the end. And then when they show Lenin, they say, oh, this is going to be season 2. Season 2 will have Lenin. It's like, oh, the flames of the October Revolution will never be extinguished. So there's a lot more. I feel like the people who watch towards the end are a lot more hardcore Marxist than the people who just watched, the first couple of episodes for Young Marx, because the show does get, a lot more darker towards the end, and I think a lot more emotional. There was something funny when in the siege of the Paris Commune, when that boy was talking about like, oh, I'm not afraid of dying, but I haven't held like a girl's hand before, which all the comments start saying 正巧了，我也是，我也没有啊，我也一样. Everyone's like, oh yeah, me too. What a coincidence. I haven't either. So, that's I think that's very typical for Bilibili comments.
Because most of these people, who comments on Bilibili are very young, and in fact in the beginning of every episode, a lot of people will type in comments like, reporting from so and so high school, reporting from
like
so and so university,
whatever middle school is here, right? So that's that is the general sense of who is commenting. But yeah, there's I think there were a lot of positive comments towards the end, especially like at the very end where they have the kind of long narration about the events that unfolded after Marx's death. They talked about the October Revolution. They talked about Jinggangshan and like the Chinese Communist Party. They talked about the transition from Mao to Deng to Hu.
In the last episode?
In the very end, yeah.
I haven't seen the last episode.
You didn't watch it?
I watched up to episode 6. I haven't seen the last one.
So you need to watch the last one because I think it is also the most controversial. Because
Really?
towards the very end, they have a narration in which they kind of bring it all back together and they start talking about socialism with Chinese characteristics. And they started talking about Xi Jinping thought. They talked about like the three represents. They talked about like the scientific outlook on development.
Wow.
And that's where all the ultras got really upset on Twitter. They're like, "Oh my God, no, the Chinese government is just trying to convince us that they're actually Marxist when they're actually capitalists." So a lot of funny comments there. That is in that I can send you some of those tweets later, but this is all relation to episode 7. And even in the Chinese comments, they're like, "Oh, 这里有私货呀." I was like, "Oh, this is some things smuggled in by the government here on this nice story of Marx," right? So it is there, but at the same time, there are also a lot of comments that are really happy and they're really proud because in the end credits of the last episode are a little different. They show the Marx events of the Marx's life, but then they start showing like pictures from the October Revolution, from the founding of the People's Republic, and they start showing things like satellite launches, People's Liberation Army Navy ships, the high-speed bullet trains, a lot of these hallmarks of Chinese development and Chinese achievements. They start showing all those too, and it's supposed to make you feel proud. And a lot of people responded
transition
to that
from
too.
internationalism to Chinese nationalism. Okay, yeah, I get that. I get that. So I'm now I have to go watch it. Except I'm gonna first watch it on YouTube, and then I'm gonna watch it on Bilibili to see what the Chinese commenters are saying, because that sounds fascinating. But one of the things that, since you brought up about the ending credits, I have to say, another thing I'm really impressed about the series, Karl Marx Anime, is the music. I mean, oh my God, the ending song was on fire. I loved it. So I look it up. Apparently, it's by a known Chinese band called
Nanzheng Beizhan, right?
Yeah, Nanzheng Beizhan,
yeah.
or in their English acronym would be NZBZ. Yeah, so they're apparently already a known group, and they start out with like a instrumental version of International, and then you transition to Chinese rap. Maybe you can describe it.
Yeah, so it's they would like tell you something like struggling for revolution or something like that. I actually forgot the words I used, but the catchphrase after that is 这很马克思, which is "this is very Marx" was my rendition of that. And that is like somewhat of a minor meme now on Twitter, Facebook, but also even in the Bilibili comments. Every time that refrain comes up, you see like 10 comments that all repeat it, 这很马克思. And it was very catchy. Like, I know some people thought it was a little corny, but I thought it was very fun as well.
Yeah,
and I agree.
Great.
I think the music is one of the best parts of the show. So yeah, it's they've used this end credit songs. They've mashed it up with other cartoons. Like I posted the other day, like 那年那图那些事. They took scenes from that cartoon, The Year Hair Affair, and they mashed it up with the end credits of the Marx song, and they made something pretty cool with that as well. So I think that's gonna stick around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, like in a way, you kind of see they talk about soft power, right? This is soft power right here. I mean, it's unintentional because this anime was purely intended for the domestic Chinese youth market.
Yeah. So on that point, like I have emailed Six Tone, I've emailed China Daily, like someone should do a story on this. Like, hey, this is a domestic production that has kind of achieved a small cult following abroad, and you guys should do a story on this. I think that would be very interesting. I want the studio to know about this. She was like, hey, you made this show for the Chinese domestic audience. There are a lot of Westerners out there who really enjoyed your show, and if I were working at that studio, I would want to know that, right? So I'm trying to figure out a way to contact them, but I have like some reviews, I have comments from a lot of friends who enjoyed it, and I want to pass all that along back to the people who made this.
Okay, so hey, anybody listening to this show, if you work in the news business, here we have the original English translator of the Chinese Karl Marx series. Please get in touch with him. Interview him. Write it up. I'm gonna put the links to your Facebook page. Sorry, what's the name of your Facebook page again?
It's President Xi, delete this account.
Yes, I'm gonna put the link to your Facebook page in our show notes, and you can also go, search, look it up in Facebook, because it's really great stuff. A lot of funny memes, mostly China focused, but also with the kind of Marx-Leninist bend. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good description.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to cover?
Well, I guess I did want to end like on a couple of notes, just on like you say, Marxism in China and what this anime kind of represents there. But there are a lot of, and you kind of hinted at this before, like the policy school, which I'm actually not sure if that's the official English translation. I thought it was the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences is their official name. They are called out in the credits, but I actually don't know what their official name is. 中国社会科学院. Is that what you're referring to earlier?
Yeah. I mean, like, there's I think they're all in the same system. There's like
Okay.
they're kind of in the same system. The people that who study Marx, like, another thing I kind only briefly touched about this earlier. But what I have heard anecdotally is that, like, these party schools are designed to train communist cadres in Marxist theories, but in practice, a lot of like, when people go there, they discover, like, a lot of what we consider taboo topics, outside the school, like in general society, for example, like especially on Weibo, would be, open for discussion inside the school itself, right? Like I don't know if that's still the case, because I heard this several years back. Back then you could talk about democracy, you could talk about independent judiciary and all these things that normally you would not be able to talk about in like a Chinese public sphere. Like, they all get to discuss it, right? Like, nothing. There's like no barred hole. So those Chinese communist school is kind of famous for that. I mean, in China, it's famous for like free thinking and within the school.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to touch on, because there are a lot of things in the show. They talk about a lot of Marx's like deeds and writings that don't necessarily seem to jive with what the Chinese government does in terms of Marxism. Like, there's a heavy internationalist focus in this show, right? Like, Marx is going across all these countries. Like, he's talking about workers across the world and the Congress and the First International. They have representatives from all places, and that's not really a big thing for the Chinese government right now. Like, promoting Marxist groups abroad. They used to do it in Southeast Asia, Africa. It wasn't very well received. Yeah, right. It was a very long time ago. And
Mao used to export revolution all over the world, like supporting.
Right. And now China says, like, we don't export revolution.
Yeah.
And so, but this show, is very much about exporting revolution. That is indeed what they accused Marx of doing. So I hope that this is a sign that, hey, I know this was made for a domestic audience, but that China is serious about, like, promoting at least Marxism, like the study of it, abroad, like providing these materials for people who are interested across the world to access themselves. I think it's very clear that Xi is very serious about Marxism. Like, if you heard his speech about Marx on the 200th anniversary, like, it was definitely someone who takes Marxism very seriously. Like, all the details he gave about Marx's life, his relationship with Jenny, all those things. Like, this is definitely someone who's serious about this. He's not fronting or anything.
That's what he's being attacked for in the media.
He has been attacked for it,
because
but
because people are saying like she is like the new Mao, right? He's like the new god emperor slash dictator that's trying to dominate all walks of life in China, right? Like trying to impose the thought control on the 1.3 billion Chinese people. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously that spin, but I do want to direct this more at like the people who think that China's just pretending to be Marxist, because there is like a not insignificant portion of people out there who think that too. Like there's he's requiring all new officials to like reread the Communist Manifesto. There's that like Xi Jinping policy app, which has been spun in the media as like a requirement for everybody, but no, it's for members of the Communist Party. Like if you sign up to be a party member, I feel like you should know this stuff. I don't think it's outrageous that being a member of a party, you're asked to study like party literature and like, know what your party stands for. So, all those requirements there, I think those have to be seen as positive steps if you identify as a Marxist Leninist. So, I all of these initiatives that they're doing here, I think this is a very strong commitment, or you can even call it recommitment to this ideology that I think wasn't necessarily there during the Hu Jintao years. I feel like he coasted a little bit more. Like
that's one way to put it.
They shout out all the various they shout out Mao Zedong thought, like Deng Xiaoping thought. They shout out the three represents, but they pointedly leave out who's harmonious society.
I'm going to talk about another podcast which shall not be named. They basically are now officially feeling the nostalgia for the quote unquote golden years of Hu Jintao, the quote unquote the liberal heydays of Hu Jintao.
Oh my God! Yeah, right. And I don't think he was not as serious about Marxism as Xi Jinping is. I think there's some broad consensus there. Like, some people see that as a bad thing, but I think most people agree on this, at least. And
I think Hu Jintao and even his predecessor, Jiang Zemin, they're more, I shall say, laissez-faire in terms of where shaping where the Chinese society is going. and the more emphasis was placed on economic development and economic management. I think Xi is trying to inject more ideology into it. I think that's why there's also a lot of opposition against this Xi's effort to kind of putting Marxism back. and I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are generations of officials who just kind of got in. They had a really nice life. They had, a lot of benefits. They didn't have to take anything seriously, and they just kind of coasted. And she is telling them, hey, that's not okay anymore. Next time, the party releases a new thing, I want you to copy it by hand, 10 times or something like that. And it's Bloomberg had this hilarious article the other day about how disillusioned bureaucrats are quitting. Well, look, okay, if you're disillusioned with this recommitment to Marxism, then by all means, please leave. That's not the type of bureaucrat that China wants right now. Like a lot of the development has been done in the last 20 years. There are other things that need to be balanced with that now. Like she also told the official Chinese trade union, like, you need to shape up. You need to do better for workers' rights. And they even released that on their own page. Like, hey, we've been given a directive. We need to do more for workers. At the two sessions, there was a delegate who works as a delivery man, and he says that China needs more workers' protections for all these delivery men, for Meituan and all of these companies that have sprung up. There's so many deliverymen out there. They have some dangerous conditions. They need comprehensive, like workers' comp. They need insurance. They need protection. So a lot of things are moving in that direction. The pace may not be fast enough for everyone, but I think it's very good to see all of this is happening. And this is something that I think is very necessary for China, right? It's it's not just about developing as fast as you can now. It's also about balancing it with the environment. It's also about balancing it with you know, workers' rights and you know, ensuring that, you know, people, you know, poverty reduction, like that is more important than, you know, making Shenzhen like the financial capital of the world, in my opinion. So I'm glad to see that that is direction the government is moving. And, you know, if
Well, in that vein, let me ask you, what is your ideal, how would you like, what direction would you like China to move in? You know, what would be your ideal China?
so, I will say, I will quote from the Year Hair Affair, and they said at the very end, like, you know, 不忘初心, don't forget what you initially set out to do, and it's to create a, you know, a 种花家 is what they called it, a land of flower planters that, you know, where everyone, no one has to go hungry, and, you know, everyone can live like a happy life, and everyone has like a roof over their heads. But, you know, it's a, I don't want to call it utopian because I think it's very much achievable, but it is a country in which everyone, you know, has a good standard of living, and which, you know, no one has to go hungry or,
You know, since we're both Chinese American, let's bring the conversation back home. From China to United States. Now, we're in the presidential election cycle again. There's a new black horse candidate, Andrew Yang, who has been proposing the universal basic income, right? So he's talking a lot about automation and how robots are replacing workers. So the solution to that, according to him, is to hand over everybody $1,000 a month. Now, do you consider that a sort of automated communism?
absolutely not. Like, first of all, like UBI is something that's also promoted by Milton Friedman. I don't see anything Marxist about that. And $1,000 is not enough to live on per month. And there are other problems, I think, with his logic about automation. Like, you know, I don't think it's a given that everything is going to be automated out and we can just sit there and, you know, live off of that. But, you know, I don't think it's, I would not consider that automated communism. I think that it's just going to be a trade off with, you know, other welfare programs that we have. And, you know, I don't really support that. But, you know, that's also U.S. politics, and very different from Chinese politics.
Oh, very different, very different. Just my input. I went surfing this morning, and oh my god, it was crowded. The surf was kind of crappy. It wasn't great condition. It was windy. The water was cold, and I'm like, God damn it! Why are there so many surfers in the water? Don't they need to go to work? So that's the point when I realized, oh my god, with $1,000 a month, shit, there's just going to be more surfers at the surf line. I'm already waiting here with 500 surfers for some shitty wave. It's going to be 1,000 or 2,000 surfers out with $1,000 a month for everybody. So now, sorry, I take back my endorsement for Andrew Yang. No UBI, people, you have to go back to work. That's my 2 cents. Okay, yeah, I agree. U.S. politics is very different from China. I think that's what, like what we said earlier, a lot of people who, when talking about U.S. politics referencing China, they're actually not talking about real China. They're talking about their idea of China, right? Like China is so different from United States. It doesn't translate. and most people, talking about China don't really know any jack shit about China. So yeah, so that's why I have this show, and that's why I was glad I have you come to our show and to give us a very different, unique perspective. Is there anything else you'd like to cover?
I don't think there's anything else that we could cover like really briefly today, but, you know, I do want to say I really enjoyed having this conversation with you, and, you know, please, like, invite me back anytime. There are so many other things that we could talk about. I think that would be interesting, at least for myself. So, thanks for having me on.
Yes, and anybody out there listening to this show, let's remember, if you want to do a story about the Karl Marx Anime made in China, make sure you get in contact with the original English translator, Sun Feiyang. We'll put his link, Facebook link in the show notes. Reach out to him, write an article. This is news. This is gonna be. I can see this be a cult classic for a long time to come.
Yeah, I promise I'm not astroturfed. I promise I'm not on any government's payroll. I did this. This is a labor of love. It's completely organic, grassroots.
Yeah, and I think on behalf of everybody, I thank you. And this has been fun. This is really great talking to you. Finally, after just watching all the funny memes on your Facebook page, I steal half of your memes. I think I just grab them and take to Twitter, and I will continue to do so. I'm not apologizing. You have great memes, and thank you again for coming to the show to talk about this. And I know there's so many other topics we could be talking about on China. I can geek out on China for hours. So we'll definitely have you back. And meanwhile, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you again for coming to the show. Good night.
Yeah, good night. Thanks.
世人不减和冷落，我不要在名利的光环下迷失自我，不忘初心，一往无前，点燃燎原之火，
让信仰引领不安的心。
这和马克思
为民营团结起来革命，
这和马克思
没有谁能熄灭我的热情，
这和马克思
为人类的解放生无真心。